Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
So in the last episode, we talked about Dan Sullivan's top 10 habits of successful entrepreneurs. This next segment, we're going to talk about the second, third, fourth, and fifth topics that were most listened to in 2024 from our listeners.
The next one, so the second most listened to podcast of the year, which was episode 167, and that was with a good friend of mine, Scott Curtis, who at the time, I guess he's changed over now, right? He's Chief Operating Officer now of Raymond James Financial. At the time, he was the president of the private client group at Raymond James. And this was an interesting one because we got on a podcast and we just sort of got on our Zoom call and we just started talking. And our conversations, and this is how they are, we have such great conversations that we just kept talking. And we basically just went right into the podcast. Like we never even...
Yeah, you covered a lot of topics, a lot of trends.
Right. So we were covering a lot of different trends. And, I think that there are going to be some trends. So we're going to cover trends sort of on the outset. But one of the things that he talked about the most was your ability to adapt, right? As an advisor, you have to have the ability to adapt to an ever-changing world. And, one of the things that I think is the most obvious in terms of adaptation is, which actually goes to continuous learning, is the AI age, right? We're coming into the AI age, and I think that is something that needs to be focused on. But he was just talking about, through his experience, how advisors are adapting. So the other thing he talked about is valuations. Valuations continue to change, and are you adapting to that trend in terms of advisors getting older and focusing on selling their practices, and are you thinking about what your practice is worth, and are you adapting to run your business the way it needs to be run to increase the value of your business, which I thought was really, really interesting. And then so that, I guess one of the other things he was talking about was common mistakes that advisors are making, and that is, I'll say the big one that always comes to my mind. When I think of valuations and advisor mistakes, one of the things that advisors like to do is brag about how good of an investment manager they are.
Yeah, they become very set in their ways because what they've always done. It's, look, to their credit, they've had great performance, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen over the next 10, 20 years of their business. So being so stuck in their ways actually makes it harder to get a higher valuation.
Right.
There needs to be some level of flexibility there.
You might be dealing with that a little bit with a couple of your clients.
A bunch. To remain nameless. But that's what happens. So we always say we have to coach the buyers, those that are acquiring practices and providing the valuations. But in reality, I feel like this year in particular, we've had to do a lot of coaching and encouraging of the advisors that are selling their business, because this is what has always worked for the last 40 years,
right.
But it may not be what works for the next 20, 30 years. And so it provides a lot more risk for the person or the team that's buying your business.
One of the things that you have to adapt with is if you want a high valuation of your practice, you should not be managing the money yourself.
Flexibility.
Because if a buyer comes in and wants to buy your practice, you're leaving. Now they have to figure out how to replace the way you're running money. And it's much easier and you get a higher valuation if that's already built in, and whether you're there or not there doesn't matter to how the portfolios are being run. And I think that advisors don't want to admit that. Some advisors have been in business a long time. You love managing money. I can appreciate that. I don't appreciate that because I didn't like running money. I like working with the clients, but not making, not do the investing part. But it's a huge mistake that you're making if you were even thinking about selling your business. So Scott, we talked a lot about that stuff. It's a great episode. You should go back and listen to it. We'll sort of put tags to all of the different episodes in this podcast. So it's a super podcast. Number 3 was talk about adaptability, right? Number 159 which was a conversation with our director of RIA services, Vince Leto, and we talked about really
the fundamentals.
The fundamentals of I'll say becoming an RIA, and should you become an RIA or not.
Right, and I think there's that sort of push-pull on topics. I think the most important topic is compliance. Do you want to take on that responsibility, that liability? We're not here to tell you not to, but as a consultant, we feel that it's important for us to give you the good, the bad, the ugly, the pros and cons of taking that on, the costs, the liability, who are you hiring to do those things, if and when the regulators come and do an analysis of your business.
When they come.
When they come, not if.
It's
when.
not if.
Right.
It's when. Yeah.
Big consideration.
Right. And, we have these conversations a lot because we talk to advisors that are I'll just say they're in the W-2 world, and they come to us and they say, we're thinking about doing the RIA thing. Like, that's literally how they say it.
I want to go RIA. That's what we hear. I want to go RIA.
I want to be an RIA. No, an RIA is a corporate entity. You don't want to be a corporate entity, right? And so we start having these conversations about, well, tell me what you know about running your own RIA, right? Running your own RIA, your own company. It's LLC, it's an RIA. It's just a corporate structure. Not really an LLC, but it's a corporate structure. Registered investment advisor. You are an IA, and you are an investment advisor in your RIA, right? That's really the way it works. And what we find is a lot of them just are doing it for the wrong reasons. They want a high payout, but they don't do the math. And so many times we walk through the math with them we have some really, really good fundamental spreadsheets that pro forma modeling that we can show people. That if you're interested, just DM us and we'll talk to you about doing it for you.
But I think they get stuck, because I have many advisor clients that I'm having the exact same conversation with. They get stuck on, well, I'm at 100% payout. Mm-hmm. I don't want to. What am I giving up?
Right.
And in reality, what would you say it really is?
It's 2, 3, 4 points tops,
give or take.
Right, because you're at 100% payout, but then you have to pay for compliance. If you're a big business, you have to hire people. You're going to pay attorneys. You're going to hire a consultant. A consultant's still going to cost you. There are some lower cost providers out there, but they are low cost for a reason, right? You get what you pay for.
Exactly.
It's like having a good attorney or a good accountant. Like, you get what you pay for. And so, but a lot of these outside consultants, they do not do, some do the work. They charge more, but none of them take the responsibility of the filings. And when the SEC comes in and is going to fine you for doing something, they have no culpability whatsoever. So I think that there's a plus and minus there. And through the analysis that I've done with the average team, it comes down to 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, because you can be RIA-like. You can function as if you can grow your advisory business.
There's plenty of firms out there.
Offload some of your legacy annuities or legacy brokerage business. You can achieve that with less risk.
Right.
So
let somebody else take the risk.
Right.
Right. Roll up into an R. If you want to be fee only, and you don't want to worry about the FINRA or brokerage business at all, there's opportunities where you can roll up into a larger RIA, which we'll talk about as a trend.
Yep.
And you're going to get all the things that you want. And I look at that 2 or 3 points. Don't look at it as a loss of income. Look at it as an investment you're making in yourself to grow your business faster.
Right, and to focus on the true revenue generating responsibilities, client facing.
So Dan Sullivan writes a book. It's called Who Not How.
Yep.
Right. It's one of, I talk about 1,000 times. It's one of my favorite books. And this is the who, not how, right? Rolling into an RIA, letting them do all that stuff. They become the who, right? So how do I grow my business? How do I triple my business in the next 3 years? The question you're supposed to ask yourself is, who can I get to help me so I can triple my business in the next 3 years? And by looking at offloading all the stuff that you're doing, the burdens of compliance and operations and all that stuff, that allows you to go focus on gathering assets. So that's the who, not the how.
Right.
Right. The next one is episode number 4, episode 181, mastering practice management. That's interesting because that's sort of like the who, not how.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. So mastering practice management is sharing strategy. We were talking about effective strategies to manage your business. And I don't talk about, this isn't really the how to run money how to, whether you're buying mutual funds or annuities or ETFs, or we don't get into that stuff. It's really the types of things that you should be doing to run your business. So some of them are like what Dan Sullivan we talk about. Your meeting cadences, right? Your who, not how. What does your team look like? Do you have the right players? Do you have the right players in the right seats on the bus? Right. Another one that I was at a meeting recently, and this came up again, where you might have somebody on your team that shouldn't be on your team. Right? This is a practice management thing that's hard to deal with sometimes. So you might have somebody that's actually slowing your business down. You might think that they're really good at being on your team because they add value.
Because they have knowledge.
Because they have knowledge, and they add value in one area. What you don't realize is the positive knowledge that they're bringing to you in the one area there's much more negative stuff going on that's slowing the company down. And I hate to say this during the holidays, but by not having that person on your team, you actually move faster. And I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and I would say 80% of the times when I ask them what are the things that they're struggling with the most, this particular issue is what they struggle with the most.
Human capital, and who's doing
Human capital.
Yep.
One of my biggest producers is X, Y, or Z, and I was talking to somebody. I was in St. Louis. We were in one of our groups, and one of his producers. His biggest headache is his biggest producer, right? And I say biggest headache, major headache. And all of us that were in this small group, and there were businesses that ranged from small, a couple $1 million to $150 million businesses. All of us almost at the same time said, get rid of her, right? Because it's a distraction to you as an owner. It's a distraction to the other employees. Right? And it's just slowing you down.
And so what do you do when someone says, but it's so much revenue to the business?
It'll get replaced because they're probably costing you more revenue than you realize.
That was a trick question.
Oh.
I knew that's what you were going to answer.
Okay. Got it. That's good. That was pretty good.
Right.
So you just have to be able to have faith. So that's why one of our core values is faith. You got to have faith that you're doing the right thing. And your job as the owner of the organization is to take care of the entire company, not just one person.
Right.
And, I can say over my span, not just here at Elite, but also in the business, every time I've gone through this process, whether I went through it deliberately or it was forced on me, meaning where someone left, the business always did better. When I was an advisor, I had a large producer leave our office one time, and this individual was confrontational to everybody in the office. Confrontational to the support staff and and the person left, and my divisional director called me one day and said, how you doing? Called me after he said, how you doing? His name was Ron, God rest his soul. Ron Farrell, he was just a tremendous leader. Anyway, and I said, Ron, I don't mean to, you may not expect this, but I think this is the best thing that's ever happened to this office. Wow. When this person walked out. And they were doing $3.5 million. Top producer, one of the top producers. And it was the best thing that ever happened to the office. So anyway, so when you look at practice management, you have to really think about, again, listen to the episode, but you really just need to step away from the office. We did our quarterly offsites, right? We leave the office to go do that.
Take time away, take think time, scheduled think time.
Yep. And just think about how your business operates. One of the strategies that we employ is, effectively act as if you are a private equity firm or venture capital firm that just bought your business. So they just bought your business, 100%, lock, stock, and barrel, and you're not there anymore. What would that company, or you in this case, right, if you were that person, what would that company do to change the organization? Like, what would they do to improve the organization now that they own it? What are those things?
If they were making any haircuts, or if they were looking at the analyzing staff and how everybody interacts, they probably would do the same thing.
Everything, right? They're going to look at your processes, your systems, your people,
your growth,
your growth, your lack of. And how do I'm making an investment, I'm spending $10 million on this business. I want to get a return on my investment, so I want the business to grow. So as a venture capitalist, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, okay, here are the things that I want to change so we can grow faster. Those are the same things that you should be doing when you look at your practice.
Right, ahead of time.
Right. And so, anyway, well, actually, sort of like the next one, right? Because I think that people don't do that because they get complacent with what's going on.
Right. Well, they get into a rhythm. They get comfortable. It's easier to not change and just stay the course and maybe ignore certain downsides of what you're doing.
Issues. Right? The environment that you're in. Right?
Path of least resistance.
Episode 179, we talked about the cost of complacency. And is complacency costing you a lot of money? And this was near and dear to your heart. So I'll let you run with this one for a little bit.
In terms of like,
well, we were talking about complacency, that we see so many advisors staying where they are.
Yep.
Because they don't want to do a little bit. They don't want to do a little bit of work. You had someone recently
decide to stay. Right. So
even though they didn't like where they are.
Right. So we went through a whole process of probably 8-10 months at least of why the firm that they were currently at wasn't supporting them or didn't care about them, and they weren't growing anymore. The technology was, going by the wayside or whatever it was. And we went through this whole exercise of leading with that notion. And then 5 days before they were ready to leave, they just said, we're not going to do it. So they chose complacency. Unfortunately, what we uncovered was that they didn't really have the level of strength in the relationship with their clients that they thought.
Because they got complacent.
Because they were right. They didn't do the things to make their clients feel appreciated. They didn't do the things that they needed to do to make their clients see different opportunities or ask for, multi-generational referrals, whatever it is. So they got caught on their heels and then ultimately decided to just stay the course, path of least resistance, and those problems aren't going away. I guarantee if we speak in a few months from now even, that they will explain the same thing.
Yeah, I think that the markets that we've been in, I'll just say from 2012 potentially, so we're talking about over 10, 12, 11 years, right? Have made advisors complacent. Have made advisors complacent in terms of the type of service that they're providing their clients. And in this case, that advisor got complacent and hadn't called many of his clients for a couple of years.
Well, this is no ding on any type of business, but I think it's the nature of advisory business. Yep. It's recurring. It's sort of set it and forget it for many advisors.
And you forget your clients.
And the reality set in that, my gosh, I can't leave without my clients. Well, if you were doing it right along the way, dribs and drabs and the little things go a long way.
Had systems and had processes and workflows, all that stuff.
They wouldn't have been exactly
right. Then the other component about complacency is that there are many times where we talk to an advisor and they don't want to necessarily go through the move because they think that their business is going to go backwards if they make a move. Right. The reality is we move most of our clients. I'm saying most. I'm being generous. I think all of them end up moving faster when they make the move. End up making more money when they make the move to a new firm. There's an energy flow there. They're getting out of a bad environment, which is distracting them from just being in a better headspace to go after new clients. And so it's actually costing you money to stay where you are because of your complacency. And that's really,
I think one other point on that advisors don't realize because they've been at the same firm for 20 years, 30 years is you've never gone through a transition. You're about to have a very different, deeper level conversation with your clients than you've ever had the opportunity to have before. Yes, it's about their performance and their legacy and their portfolios and their estate or whatever, but you're about to have just a deeper conversation about how much you care about them and what their relationship and their longevity means with you. So when we talk to advisors that are fearful of transitions because it's a lot of work or they're fearful of, retention, we ask them, would you spend some time learning about how to have a different level of conversation with your client? And when they do, they usually come back and say, oh my gosh, that was the best conversation I've had with my client in years. And oh, by the way, they referred to me, their cousin and their grandmother. And my business is growing.
We're not just trying to help somebody move firms, right? Like I said, we're trying to empower you to make the right move, not just the next move. And part of that means helping you engage in better conversations with your clients, not about why you're moving, because we don't want you to do that, right? You don't tell them that you're moving. but about how to get your arms around those clients pre-move, so that when you make the move, it's really successful, so that you call us back, which happens a lot of times, and say, I should have done this sooner. Right? We hear that. To us, that's like the win. When we love that.
Yeah. No one ever goes back the other way.
Well,
whether it's leaving.
Well.
Okay, so maybe we just teed this up naturally.
Yeah. So
okay, ready to go.
Anyway. So those were our top. Those are really the top 5 topics, and you can see there's a lot to unpack there. Right? This is we can keep talking about these things. And I'd love to talk more about them. So if you're an advisor and you're struggling with one of these areas and you want some help there, just reach out to us, right?
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.